Hey guys, welcome to Don's Little Hobbies, and today we are basically going to talk about me growing up in the early 2000s, what the shows were like. Basically, it's gonna sound like this. My childhood, blah blah blah. It's gonna make me sound like I'm 75 years old, even though I'm only 21. But without further ado, this video is really just going to be me ranting about how the shows used to be when I was growing up, compared to how they are now, and of course it's going to be how That's So Raven makes me feel like I'm 9-10 years old again. So without further ado, let's start this video. So I was of course born in 1997, and I grew up in the early 2000s. Now, the entertainment during this time, I wouldn't call the golden age of entertainment. No, of course, that came between the 1980s and the 1990s. But in the early 2000s, I would definitely call it the fading lights, because the shows were not bad. They were actually really, really good, really, really entertaining, and it wasn't until 2008 until what I consider dark times of television really happened. So, when I was a kid growing up, of course, when I was really young, I used to watch tons and tons of reruns of shows that came before me, like the Flintstones, the Jetsons, and Yogi Bear, and of course, you got stuff like Invader Zim from Nickelodeon, and Hey Arnold, and just old 1980s and 1990s TV shows that I absolutely loved. But the shows at the time that were actually really good for me was shows like, and I know this is gonna sound crazy, but SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Danny Phantom, those are all from Nickelodeon. You want Cartoon Network? Okay, how about Imaginary Home for Foster's Imaginary Home? What was the name of that show? Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends? I think I just butchered that name a couple times, but I think it was Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Yeah, I used to love that show. Of course, there was Ed, Edd n Eddy, Dexter's Lab, and I could go on and on and on. From Disney, there wasn't very much TV shows. Most of the time, Disney Channel started going into the direction of live-action TV shows. Of course, Nickelodeon did too, with the amazing Zoey 101. Then you got, of course, Drake and Josh, and iCarly. I didn't like Victorious, but I did love iCarly, Drake and Josh, and of course Zoey 101. And then you also had, of course, from Disney, you got The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, you got Cory in the House, you got Hannah Montana. My personal number one favorite will always be Wizards of Waverly Place, with my second being Zack and Cody. And then my third favorite was, of course, That's So Raven. I absolutely loved That's So Raven. And it's interesting because none of these shows did I start watching from the beginning. It was actually my little sister that started watching these shows, and because me and my sister were sharing one TV at the time, I didn't get a TV in my room until much later, my own TV in my room until much later, that I had to share TV shows with my sister. So that's why I started watching Drake and Josh, and Zoey 101, and Zack and Cody, and That's So Raven, and I really ended up loving these shows, and it's all thanks to my sister. And eventually, when I did get my own TV in my own room, of course, I watched tons and tons of Drake and Josh, That's So Raven, Cory in the House, Wizards of Waverly Place, and blah 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 blah. There's just tons of good shows. All of these shows have something in common with me. During this time of me growing up during this time of the age of TV shows, cartoons. All of these shows have the humor is like the best way to say it, even though this sounds completely bad. It has dated humor. It definitely had dated humor and jokes, and it just simply felt like what it felt like the times were giving, which is really interesting because I have the exact same criticism for the shows that came after it, but in the complete opposite light. These shows, I don't know why, but these shows had like a charm to them. They were dated, the old dated jokes, but it has some sort of charm to them where even when today I rewatch some of the episodes, I don't do it very often, but the other day I was actually watching, it was like a couple months ago, I started watching, I think I only watched 2 or 3 episodes of the first season of Zack and Cody, and the jokes are seriously outdated and they come off of what the time, they were a product of the time, of what kids were into at the time. And I understand that, and yet there's just a serious charm to them that lacked in other shows. So after 2008, I'm not saying that there aren't gems, aren't sparks of light in the dark era, but for me personally, after 2008, no, there was almost no TV show that was really good anymore. Of course, there were small gems like Gravity Falls, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. There's few more. There's Good Luck Charlie. I actually used to love Good Luck Charlie. I really was a big fan of Phineas and Ferb. Yeah, there are small little gems that came out after 2008. But after 2008, here's the thing. If the shows weren't canceled or completed by 2008, and they kept on going, then after 2008, all of the shows ended up feeling either dated and stale, like they were just starting to feel very, very stale. They weren't changing with the times, I think, and it didn't fit. It didn't feel right watching the shows after 2008. They just didn't have, while they still did have the charm, it didn't come off the right way like it was when I was little. And for the newer shows that came out during the time, like I said, they were product of the times, and in the complete opposite effects, they were just absolutely awful. They really, really were. A lot of the shows, and this what makes me really feel sorry for the kids who grew up with these shows, is they honestly felt like straight up rip-offs of the shows that came before it. You change a little bit of the theme, you change the child actor, but the plot of the show, the plot of the episodes, all stayed the same. And while yes, that should actually add the same type of charm, it doesn't, and here's why. Number one, the jokes and the humor were all changing to what the times were, and they weren't having that a nice little charm with them anymore. And a lot of the times, these shows had brand new to the scene actors that really, and I'm sorry to say this, but they had absolutely no talent. They had absolutely no talent at all. Unlike when Zack and Cody came on the scene, unlike Raven, unlike Hannah Montana, or Selena Gomez. These kids had talent back then. But all of these new kids that came on the scene, they simply did not have any talent. And while, yes, eventually later on in their time of being on Disney, they got more experience to do it the right way, and eventually a lot of them even somewhat looked like they had talent, but when they started out, none of these kids looked like they had any talent at all. Look, I'm okay if a kid doesn't really know how to act, but if you simply don't have talent, then it's not going to end up being a good show. And it's for that reason that I could not watch Ant Farm. I've seen Ant Farm maybe 2 or 3 episodes, not complete episodes either, because I could never watch a full episode because of the acting was so terrible, and the plot of the episodes they felt straight up rip-offs from shows that came before. Another show like this was actually, I think it was called Kicking It Up, or something like that. Not a fan. Lab Rats? Now, granted, Lab Rats actually had a really good amount of really talented actors on Lab Rats. The problem was, they didn't let the kids act. In fact, they told the kids to act like the kids that were coming out during the time, which couldn't act. So, yeah, some of the kids on Lab Rats, yeah, they had talent. They could act. I've seen it. They couldn't act on the show because that's how the show directed them to act. And Shake It Up, you know what? Shake It Up was the only one that I could actually watch full episodes of. With that said, it felt very much like ripping off of Hannah Montana, Wizards of Waverly Place. It felt really much like a rip-off of those two shows together. And the actors, they could dance, but they couldn't act. Not at the time, at least. They really didn't have a talent to act. Eventually, though, through training and through their experience, they did become fantastic actors, and these actors now have great careers. I'm not saying that, but when I was watching them, none of these kids could act. None of them. None of them could act. I had a really hard time with that, watching these shows, and eventually that's why I stopped watching television altogether. And nowadays, all of my entertainment, even when I watch Raven's New Home, all of my entertainment comes from the internet. I started watching Netflix and Hulu and a whole bunch of other stuff because there was simply nothing good on TV. I think before that I was trying to watch TV. I was watching stuff. I was really interested in the Science Channel at the time. I was watching Gravity Falls, Good Luck Charlie, and Star Wars The Clone Wars. And that's all. That's all that was interesting to me at the time. And I'm not saying that there's not other shows that are really good at this time period. They were just simply not my taste. And a lot of the times weren't very good shows at all. I'm sorry, but I did not like the shows between 2008 and 2017. The only thing that I really was getting into was anime at the time. I love, of course, Dragon Ball Super and Naruto and now My Hero Academia, for God's sakes. But anyway, now to talk about what this video is really supposed to be. It's supposed to be about Raven's New Home. Raven's New Home. I don't know if it's because it's supposed to technically be a reboot / continuation of That's So Raven, but when I watch the show, it actually feels like something that came from my childhood. I see the dated humor, and I don't see any humor that's caused by the times we live in, too. All of the humor in the show is dated, and I actually really like it. It brings such an amazing little charm to it that it just makes me feel like when I was a kid. Maybe there are a couple jokes and a couple things here and there that are products of the times in the show, but for the most part, from what I can tell, this show feels just like the shows I used to watch when I was really little. And again, I'm 21 years old talking about these shows like they happened 50, 60 years ago. I don't know why, but all of these shows, they had charm to it. And this show, That's So Raven, has the exact same little charm to it. Not only that, but they have phenomenal actors. The new actors on the show, these guys have brilliant talent, and I can't wait to see how their careers take off in the future. But for right now, I'm really enjoying the kids on the show. And of course, we got Chelsea and Raven back. But this show, it really feels like it came from the early 2000s, and I'm surprised that it's here. I'm surprised it's coming at this time period where TV is almost non-existent. And for the new generation, I'm really happy for the new generation that's watching the show, because now it's up to me and people my age. We are able to say, hey kids, this is what TV was like when we were growing up. I remember when I was growing up, all of the cartoons were like this. In fact, I could sit there for hours upon hours upon hours just watching the shows because they felt like this. You know, they had talent, they had spark. It's just great. And I'm so happy to see a show like this being broadcasted to a new generation. Maybe it will make the new generation start watching the older shows. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. But anyway, that's my little rant on what Raven's new home feels like to me. Feels like to the people like me who grew up on shows like this in the early 2000s, and how it just makes us feel like kids, and how we are so happy that shows like this is being brought to children, because I really, really am happy about that. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Bye. By the way, I also will be doing a review for Season 2 very shortly.